So again, I appreciate everyone tuning in this morning or afternoon, depending on your location. Today, I want to cover some of the more manual aspects of mesh editing and HyperMesh that, like I was mentioning, a lot of people really like and sort of migrate to HyperMesh for. So I'll cover some of those. I probably won't have time to get through everything, but I'll at least hopefully give you guys a good overview, a good taste of some of the tools that you guys that we have to offer you guys. And hopefully try to clear up some of the confusion of where certain, mesh refinement versus mesh coarsening tools are in our ribbon layout of our new interface. So hopefully that'll clear some things up for you. And then if you guys are interested in any other demos or any specific topics that you'd like us to cover, we do have a survey on our webpage for this webinar series. So I'll put the link to that webpage in the chat for everyone to access. So yeah, I always encourage you guys, feel free to go on there and suggest a topic to us. And then we can include it in the next sort of 5 topics that we release at a time. Yeah, feel free to suggest any topics if you want us to delve further into anything. But with that all out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and load up HyperMesh, and we'll start take a look at some mesh editing. So I'll also use this opportunity to announce the release of HyperMesh 25.1 for those of you who weren't aware of that. So we released this just a couple weeks ago. So going forward, we're going to be doing our demos for this series in the latest and greatest now, which is 25.1. Okay. So I got a model loaded up here. I guess I'll just start generating maybe a mesh on this, like this rib component here. Let me go ahead. I'll just select that I to isolate. If you're curious about all the keyboard shortcuts I use, I try to announce them, but we do have a video, a recording of the keyboard shortcuts demo that we did in the series a few months back that you can check out. That's linked on that webpage. Okay, and so I'm going to generate just a quick 2D mesh here. I'm going to hit F12, which I mapped to a freeform mesh. By default, it's now batch mesher. Various reasons for that, but you can change whatever the default 2D mesh option is in the keyboard shortcuts. So if you go View, Keyboard Shortcuts, I think that's under, yeah, if you expand 2D freeform create, you can just put F12 in there. So that's the sort of classic keyboard shortcut for the general 2D auto mesh. So F12, I'm going to select Control A, select all my displayed surfaces. Let me first get a feel for how big this model is. So that's 75 right there. Maybe I'll try a mesh of, maybe I'll keep it broad for now and I'll try 20. 20. And enter. So right off the bat, whenever you create a mesh in HyperMesh, when you have the interactive mode set, which let me Control Z and show you guys that real quick. Go here, Control Z. So I think we've covered this over the interface demo, but in these tools, you'll have this little hamburger menu with various options. So for meshing for the 2D auto mesh tool, this is where you would define your element size, your element types, things like that. So don't want to really get into all that right now. Again, if you want us to delve into more details on all this, just let us know in the survey. But what I want to mention here is this interactive mode set. So with that interactive mesh mode set, after you generate some mesh, so I'll middle click to generate my mesh, it goes into the interactive mode, which allows you to adjust edge density, biasing, and even the basically the mapping of elements onto the surfaces. So there's plenty of different ways you can change all of these edge densities. You can just click and change the number of nodes on that edge, increase, decrease. You can select multiple at once so that it makes it easy to sort of like match up edge densities. So just clicking, and I could change this to maybe 10. Four. There we go. Let's do 4 here. Cool. So yeah, you can do individual edges. You can do like a box selection, so you can adjust tons of edges at a time. And a cool neat little thing that I like is you can Control C and Control V edge densities. if you like. So you can do like, for example, maybe we only need 5 here or six here. So when you hover your cursor over some edge density, you can Control C to copy that edge density, and then just hover your cursor over any other edge and Control V to paste that edge density. So there's tons of cool little tricks like that here. You can use the scroll wheel to adjust that edge density dramatically. If I remember, it's Control Scroll. Yeah. So of course, scrolling up to increase, scrolling down to decrease. So yeah, it just makes it convenient to go in and easily adjust all these edge densities. So again, this is with that interactive mode set in the meshing options. What does this need to be, 13? Okay, I can clean that up in a little bit. So yeah, and we also have biasing that you can adjust. So like, for example, if you need to bias the edge density to like a leading edge of a wing or something like that, you can use this tool to do so. Select some edges. And there's different types of biasing. So you could do like linear, exponential, or if you're grabbing like maybe just a single edge denoting an entire leading edge, you could do like a bell curve biasing distribution. So that might be helpful in those scenarios. And then I selected a bunch of edges here, so it's doing some wacky stuff, but you can adjust the direction of the biasing with just adding a negative value, -10 versus say 10. So just FYI, just some quick tips, and I don't typically get too much into the weeds of face editing, but this can sometimes be convenient if you have, like you see here, like certain surfaces that are more representative of a certain type of shape, like a triangle or a circle, things like that. So this controls how HyperMesh basically distributes the flow of those elements along those surfaces. So yeah, sometimes it can be useful to update that, but generally most folks don't do too much with the face editing. So yeah, those are your options just right after generating an initial mesh. Okay. So some of the other editing options I want to cover, or at least, before I get into all the edit elements options, like let's say you want to regenerate your mesh. So you can just go in back to your 2D mesh and just freeform those surfaces, or you can change the selector to elements, Control A, and then maybe say an element size of 10 here in this case. Middle click, and there now I get, a more refined mesh. So you can remesh the surfaces that the original mesh was based on if you want to remesh, or you can just select those elements directly in your mesh. And if it's hard to find the elements, remember, you can always do advanced selections to select elements by some components or some solid or something like that. Okay, and then in the dropdown, there are some other general meshing versions. So the batch mesher, this was based on the part representations and the parameter controls that you can set that we talked about 2 sessions ago, I believe. So that's kind of the more automated meshing approach where you would define like how many elements you want on a fillet and use the batch mesher to do all the meshing for you. Um, and then you also have map mesh. In older versions, I believe this was called quad mesh, but this is, for generally generating like a panel mesh. Panel mesh is what it was called before. And so, yeah, this can be useful if you're generating just a quad mesh that you're going to extrude into a 3D hex mesh, for example. This can be useful in those scenarios. So a few different options there. I usually just use the freeform. Okay. All right. Let's say Control Z, I think will get me back to my coarser mesh, right? There we go. So you can just do a freeform directly on the elements to remesh your part. Another remeshing tool that I really like that I think a lot of people benefit from is the rebuild tool. And this, at least in my opinion, just gives a little bit of a better rebuild to your mesh. So it works similarly to just remeshing directly your elements from your original mesh. So you would select your elements, But this is instead based on those parameter and criteria files that I talked about with you guys a couple sessions ago. So based on things like, how many washers or layers of washers around a hole do I want? How many elements around certain holes do I want? Things like that. So that's what this is all based on. But you can't just use the default options, and in my experience, they've been pretty good. So you don't have to go through all those options manually if you don't want to. Um, and we're talking with development about ungraying this box for the element size, but right now you just got to go click on the options, edit criteria, and then define that element size in here. So we're going to try to update this hopefully soon so that this little element size box can speak to that criteria editor. But for now, we're going to go with an element size of 10. And another neat thing about the rebuild tool is you can use flow guides. These are useful for adjusting basically the distribution of elements that HyperMesh generates here. So like, let's say, for example, I want my rebuilt mesh to sort of follow along this arc here, this like arced surface. I can define a path around it. So something like this, and it'll kind of do like a spline type of thing. It'll make a curve, get this out of the way, curve, and something like, yeah, something like that maybe. Maybe I could go back and adjust it if I want, but let's say I'm good there. I'll add that flow guide. And now when I rebuild, not only will it, adjust the mesh size and adjust sort of how it meshes my part based on all of those parameters, it'll also give me a nice flow sort of around this edge I just defined. So we do rebuild, we'll give it a second. Now you see, I kind of have like almost in a way like a couple layers of like washer elements around here in a sense. So just allows you, and if I wanted to, it looks like it got the distribution around the surface pretty good. But if I wanted to, I could have maybe also created a guide around this hole to get nice distribution of elements around there. So big fan personally of the rebuild tool and being able to use those flow guides. So there's tons of other things I want to get into with you guys. We also have a bunch of options under edit elements. And these are more sort of manual, I guess you could say fine tuning, element editing. So if we go under there, we got a bunch of different options. So let me start with some over the others here. So let me start with first move. So move is a pretty useful tool for moving nodes or even elements, just sort of manually. So you can, just move a node, like maybe I don't like this node. See, it's going a little slow. There we go. Not sure why it's not letting me. There might be a fixed point there. That's probably what that is. So yeah, I probably have a fixed point in the geometry that's fixing a node there. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, this lets you move around nodes wherever you do have that freedom. And you can move around elements. So this can be useful for like adjusting the location of trias, for example. Like maybe if I wanted to bunch these trias over here for some reason, I could bunch those up together, maybe try to combine some of them if I wanted. So lets you move nodes, elements, and I think you can also just move quads as well. Or mostly just trias, yeah. So that's cool. So to demonstrate smooth, let me make a mess. Let me just like make a mess over here. Rip, rip, rip. So let's say for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe you had some problematic geometry. You get some wacky stuff going on with your mesh, something like this, right? In those cases, what you can use is smooth. And it's a little hard for me to explain this tool sometimes, other than just that it smooths out, it gives a more even distribution to your elements in that area that you select. So I find that for cases like this, where you just got some wackiness going on, you don't even know where to start, right? I would start with just smoothing out those elements. And I would use the auto option, but you do have other options for like prioritizing the smoothing out the elements for, yeah, like fixing shape, angle, quality index, quality checks, things like that. But I usually just use auto and then smooth and blame. So pretty good for fixing little issues like that. Some other, just quickly, just want to mention you have densities here as well. So this is the same as that interactive meshing mode density, right? Where you can just adjust edge densities, right? So it works the same way. You can just select any edges and adjust how many nodes are along those edges. Create is cool. Pretty self-explanatory, allows you to create an element manually. So if for whatever reason, like you're just getting some little gap, like where you just want to put one single element, you can use this to do that. And then if I remember right, there was a setting for creating 1D versus 2D versus 3D. So be aware of that. That's caused me confusion in the past. I'm like calling up our devs. I thought it could support 3D elements now, and I didn't realize you're supposed to set the create mode to 3D. So be aware of that. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Maybe if I just like delete an element real quick, I can show you guys. So hit E for elements, maybe just grab one, delete. And let me turn off my geometry maybe real quick. So we do edit elements, create, and then you can just like snap onto the node points. Bloop, bloop. So I could just create a tria right here. Left click here, create that tria, or Control Z, create my full quad. So same situation with 3D. There's just another click for defining that depth of the hex in this case. Okay, and associate, I definitely want to touch on this. I don't really have time to get into the real depth of doing basically geometry-based mesh editing, but effectively what I want to get across is that most of the meshing in HyperMesh, or at least the meshing that I did here, was associated to the surfaces of this component here. So if I did, let's see, turn on those surfaces. So that mesh is what we call associated to those surfaces. So as I adjust the surfaces, it'll adjust the mesh in turn. So just I guess just real quick, if I did like an interactive split, for example, and I may have lost associativity at that surface. Let me do like here. So if I wanted to like provide a split down here, I could do something like this. Left click, drag. Oh, that makes a mess. Probably from all the remeshing I did. Let me see if I can do something like this for better. That's a better example. So you see, as I'm adjusting my geometry, because my mesh is associated to that geometry, it adjusts the mesh in turn. So just wanted to get that across, because if you lose that associativity, let me get my nice mesh back. If you lose that associativity, you can use that tool. Edit elements, associate. Yeah, it looks like I lost some association of these elements down here, which I could reassociate. But I'll just say this tool can be a little hit or miss sometimes. So just be conscious, be careful of it. And then you can also disassociate as well if you want to like kind of detach your elements from that association to your services. Okay, and so in Split, there's tons of useful stuff in here. You can use this for splitting 2D, 1D, even 3D elements. So for 3D, that's pretty simple. You have the solid option. Let me see if I can turn on my solid elements. Oh, I don't have any in this model. Let me go. I think I have some in this model. Let me go elements, 3D, I to isolate. Okay, so yeah, say you had some quads you want to refine, you can go edit elements, split, solid, hexas, or you can split them into tets, and then select and split. Oh, no, I got a crash. I probably shouldn't have split across these edges right here. That probably didn't help. Okay, let's load back up HyperMesh. I also like to blame any technical issues on WebEx or Teams, which honestly I don't think is particularly invalid in my opinion. So let's open back up this one. So yeah, quickly, I want to at least just show splitting up those hexes, and then let's see. Oh, and I also want to show, should have some time to show splitting some of the different ways you can split quads and then 1Ds also can be useful. And yeah, there's tons of other tips also. Like the move tool can also just be used to move any like particular element or node or anything like that. So you could move all of these elements, you can mirror them, scale them, tons of stuff, tons of different editing options that I don't really have time to delve into here. If I, let's see, isolate. Okay, it's thinking, there we go. Maybe let me do this. Maybe let me grab some I to isolate them first. Okay. And then I'll split these guys. So we do 2D, edit elements, split, solid, and Control A, middle click to split, and there we go. So pretty easy to refine solids. Let's see if we have some, let me get the A to show the rest of my elements. Let's see what else. Oh, so like let's say, for example, this is a kind of neat one. So there's a lot of options under split, just FYI, folks. So you can use this to also split 1D elements with plate. So I know this is confusing, but the plate can be used to split quads and 1D elements. So if I just generate quickly some 1Ds, just create some beams. Do 10 here. Uh, so something like that. Let me do attach to a line. That might have associated that to let's do services. So let me like just 1D this line. We'll beam it. So just created some empty beams. I'll isolate those. I to isolate. There we go. So you can use the edit elements split plate to also split 1D 1D elements. So you can just say how many splits do you want? You want to split them once or twice, split, and there we go. And you get some more copies here. And then you can just use under topology. And I know this is confusing, but we also have under here coarsen in topology. So you can use this to coarsen 1Ds or 2Ds. Okay. And so part of the reason for this, and I'm going to try to squeeze in an FE topology demo sometime soon, but we're bringing together a lot of the tools for editing geometry and for editing mesh or elements, kind of bringing them together into a workflow we call FE geometry. So a lot of these aspects like dragging a hex mesh, that's why that's now under topology extrude, right? So there's a lot of things that are moving with regards to mesh and geometry editing that are coming together within this topology or FE geometry workflow. So yeah, FE geometry here is where you can sort of define that. And again, I'd like to cover that in more detail at a later date. So there's tons of mesh editing options that I didn't really have time to get to, but we only have a few minutes. So I want to just give you guys a few minutes here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or I believe you can unmute your mic. But definitely drop questions in the chat if you have any. I'll see if I have anything else I can just show real quick while I'm waiting for any questions. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I want to also just briefly touch on this layer option. This can be useful for defining like a split down like an entire length kind of thing. So like let's say split, and maybe let's do like maybe over here something like this. I can define how many times I want to split, I guess, or number of layers. I'll do one. And basically this will figure out, it'll create a line normal to this. It'll create a line all the way down this path to split the elements by. So I might have to select the elements, we'll see. Yeah, there you go. Check it out. So all the way down that length here, we now have a split. I think that's pretty cool. That can be pretty useful. The split, you can also use this to, yeah, like combine or delete some edge. There's a combine tool here, graphical lines, so you could use this to even just like draw a split. I probably shouldn't do this without testing it, but I'm gonna do it anyway. There we go. So it draws like a little edge, still keeping your mesh connected, which is nice. Okay, one more minute. Let's see if I have anything else. Yeah. So yeah, I think that just about covers at least to the main mesh editing tools I wanted to show. So, and again, don't forget that you also have options for mirroring and scaling your mesh. So in the future, we're going to be showing mesh morphing. That's going to be, I believe, in 2 sessions from today. So mesh morphing is for more dramatic mesh changes that allows you to, yeah, change like the entire shape and topography and topology of your geometry, or excuse me, of your mesh without having to remesh. So super useful if you get like some new CAD, some new design of a component or system. You can use some morphing to just adjust your existing mesh to the new geometry. So yeah, we're going to be covering that in a couple weeks, and then there's a lot of other aspects with mesh editing and meshing and HyperMesh that we want to cover with you guys. So I hope today's topic was helpful for you guys. Feel free, let us know if it wasn't in the survey, or let us know if you have any future topics that you guys want us to cover. But with that out of the way, I'll go ahead and let you guys all go. So appreciate it, everyone. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day.